Okay, so we are 12 parts into our Space Invaders game. This is our 13th lesson. And we've got a pretty complete game here. There's a few things we want to tweak, and then we're going to add sound effects. But if we take a look at it, we run our game. We have kind of like a start screen that loads. Then we got we get start our game. We keep track of the score. And so all this stuff is pretty great. What we'd maybe like to do is to add a part where we can maybe change the level. So like if you beat this level, it'll go on to the next level, maybe get like a little bit harder. So you might want to think about like what it means to get harder and stuff like that. We've got the game over state. And so here we're going to focus on adding to those the levels here. And so we have our game state, and we're going to have add a start level state to handle like starting the level. And this will display a start level screen as well. So let's go here, and we're going to make a void render start level screen. Okay, so we're going to make this, and this function will draw the start level screen. And so it will just say, let's have, we'll clear the display. And then we're going to basically just copy our load screen here. Yeah, let's copy all this. And then we'll just make some little tweaks to it. So we're going to copy this one, but we're going to say, so we're going to say level, and then we're just going to print the current level. Just like that. And then we'll have our score as well. So we got, we'll put this on there as well. So we've got our, we'll clear the display, we're going to set our text size, we're going to have the large font, we're going to show the level. And then here in smaller font, we're going to show the current score. And yeah, so now we need to create this variable. So up here at the top, with our other variables, we're going to make one current level. We'll start with level 1. Actually, we'll start with 0. What we're going to do, so we're going to come down to our game states, and here we're going to set, when we click the button, instead of starting the game, we're going to go to what do we call it? Start next level, maybe. What do we call it? Start level. So we're going to have set it to start level, and so we're going to have another case here. Case start level, and we're just going to say current level. Actually, what we'll do here is, instead of clearing the display, we're going to render load screen, render start level screen. Okay, and we'll get rid of this delay here because we don't need it anymore. But before we do that, we're going to update the current level. Actually, we're going to move all this down. Okay, that's what we'll do. So in our start level state, we're going to reset the game, we're going to increase the current level, and we're going to render our start level screen. Okay, now we do have a problem here because in our reset game function, we set the score to be 0. So we want to get rid of that because we don't want to reset the score when we start the next level. And so what we'll do is we're going to add right here, so when we start a new game, we set that current score to 0. Okay, so we reset the game, we removed this line from there so that we don't change the score to 0. We increment the current level, we render that start level screen, and we're going to delay for 1 second, and we might decide we want to change that amount. And so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Okay, so that didn't work for 2 reasons. First thing, here, when we start the level, we need to now change the game state to game on. So game state, and we'll say, sorry, game state equals game. And we'll add a break here. So technically we could leave this, we could remove this, and then it will like fall through. So without the break, it'll go on to the next one. And so we could get rid of this break and have it fall through the next one, but I don't think we actually, it will create some compiler like warnings, and so we'll just not worry about that. Okay, so we're gonna break, and we'll come back through into the game state. But the other thing is, when we do this, we never show the display. So we need to add display.display. We're adding this to our render start level screen function so that it will actually show up when we try to get it to play. Okay, so now it goes to, when we do, we start our game, it goes to level 1, score equals 0. We may want to have it sit there a little bit longer, but that's doing kind of what we want. And now we want to figure out if we have gotten all the aliens, we go to level 2. And so that's the next step here. Okay, so when we let's see, when we check for collisions, it's probably want to do this. So, in our move bullets function, no, let's see, when do we check that collision? Here we go, when we move the space, nope. Let's see. Move loop. Here we go. Check bullet collisions. So we need to find a way to see if there's any alien left. So what we can do is, let's make in our alien fleet functions, let's say uint 8t get num active aliens. And so what this will do is, this will tell us how many aliens are active still. And so we're going to loop through. And so, close out these brackets here. So close out this one, this one. We're going to loop through our rows and our columns. We're going to get the alien status. We're going to have a counter. So we're going to say int count. So uint 8. It's going to be equal to 0. And now, if the alien is active, we're going to add to the count. And then we're going to return our count. And so this will tell us how many are active. And so, in our game loop here, if alien fleet dot get num active aliens is equal to 0, then we're going to say game state equals sorry, single equal sign equals start level. And so what will happen is, if we get to a point where all the aliens are deactivated, and then none of them are visible anymore, we go to the next game, we go back to the start level game state, which will increment the current level, and then it will set the game state to game on again, and we'll start over. Now, I'm thinking about this, and we need to look at a reset game function. So we're going to copy this here, and we're going to paste it right here. And we want to set the position and these positions here. We want to set them all to active, and we want to reset all the bullets. But right here, specifically the speeds, we want to work on these, because this is where we'll make the game more difficult. And so we're going to call this one set level. And maybe we'll pass in the level. So u and beat t current level. So we'll do that. And so now we're going to take this set level function, and we're going to come up here, and instead of resetting the game, we're going to set the current level. Okay. And so we start by passing in the 1, and then the 2, and the 3, and so on. And then we're going to move this reset game back up here. Okay. And in the reset game, we're going to put the current score back. And also in our reset game, we need to set the current level too. So current level, we'll set that back to 0. So we reset those two things, so if the game ends, we start back at level 1. Okay, so coming back down to here in our set level function, maybe we want to just set the X speed to maybe current level times, yeah, so it gets a little bit faster each level. That might be a good way to do it, and if we decide that's too easy, we can change it. And then that should do the trick. So let's go and test this out. Okay, so here we are about to finish up level 1. So we got a level 2, and they got a little bit faster, just like we were hoping. And so this seems to work pretty well for having like our next levels. And so we'll see. You can see definitely they're moving faster, and the game got a little bit harder. Alright, now we're at level 3. And they're even faster. There you go. Okay, so this is in pretty good shape here. So now the next step is to add our sound loop. So we won't get that all done here in this video, but we'll go ahead and at least get it started. So we're going to add, I think, a sound class for handling all the sounds. And the trick here is that potentially you could have multiple sounds that are overlapping, and we want a way to deal with that. But first, to make it as simple as possible, we'll just go ahead and create it so that it makes two sounds, one when we fire the laser, and one when there's a collision. Okay, so we're going to use this tone function from the Arduino library to generate our sounds, and we're just going to use this part where we set the pin and the frequency. Okay, and so let's go ahead and I don't think, oh, and then we can call no tone when we want to turn it off. Okay, so coming back to here in our sound loop, so let's make actually before we get to the sound loop, let's decide what pin we want this on. And so we're going to say const uint 8t speaker pin, and we're going to set this to be pin, I'm going to set it as 10, but I'm going to come back and change it. Let me do some quick read. Okay, yeah, so we're going to use pin 10 here, and the reason why is because if basically when you're using the tone function, you can run into some compatibility issues. and pin 10 here is connected to like some timers underneath the surface, and so if we need to change the tools that we're using to create sounds, we could do that. Okay, and so we're going to make two sound effects. So bool weapon fired equals false, and bool explosion equals false. Okay, and these will be our two sound effects for now, and if we want to expand this later, we can. And then we will have our, let's see, so let's go uint 16t weapon fired length. We'll say it's 16, this way we can make it longer. And so this is the length of the sound effect. So this will be like how many cycles long it is. Explosion length. Okay, so we got those two things. And now what we're going to do is we're going to come to our sound loop. Actually, let's make a timer as well. So make a timer for our sounds. So sound update timer. This will be 10 milliseconds. This will be fairly quick. We may need to adjust our game loop. Oh, no, we got a delayed one. That's fine. Okay, so let's go to our sound loop now. We're going to use our sound update timer. And go to our sound loop. And so we'll say if sound update timer dot time up. And we'll say or we're going to say sound activated, so we can reset this right away. And so let's come back to up here. Let's make one more called bool sound activated equals false. And so this way we don't have to wait if we try to start a sound while it's in the middle of a timing cycle. And then we're going to say sound update timer dot reset, and then we're going to say sound activated dot equals false. All right, and we're going to make a static uint 16t counter equal to 0. So if sound activated, we're going to reset that counter. So counter equals, we'll have to check on which sound effect, right? So if we'll say if what do we call our sound effects? We call them weapon fired and explosion. Let's come back down to here. Okay, so we're going to say if weapon fired. There's probably a better way to do this, but for now this is what we're going to do. Counter equals weapon fired length, else counter equals explosion length. Okay, and now we're going to decrement the counter and no, we're going to do that here. Let's actually do this. We're going to change this to be, no. Okay, yeah, so now what we'll do is we'll say if weapon fired, we'll say counter. Okay, so what we'll do is this. Then we're going to say, so we'll track the frequency here too. So static uint 16t current frequency also equal to 0. And so what we're going to do is we're going to maybe we don't even need that. So we're going to say tone, and then we're going to say speaker pin, and we'll set the frequency for the weapon fired to be like 800 for now. Maybe we'll change that. And then and now here we'll set it to be our explosion. And so we'll do is if counter is less equal to 0 and weapon fired or explosion, then we're going to say no tone on our speaker pin. Alright, then we're going to move this sound activated here into right here. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I guess we don't need this anymore. So when a sound is activated, we're going to come into here and we're going to turn on the sound. And if it's the weapon fired, we're going to turn on for this long. If it's the explosion, we're going to turn on for this long. And we're going to change, so we'll do a lower frequency for the weapon fired, and so that sounds. Okay? Or for the explosion. And then what we're going to do is we're going to subtract from our counter, and if our counter is less than or equal to 0 and the weapon is fired or there's an explosion that's active, so if either of these are true, we're going to set to no tone, and now we'll set these to be deactivated so they turn off. Equals false, explosion equals false. Okay? And so now in our sound loop, or I guess in our game loop, so our move loop probably, we'll, wherever we create the bullet, so we need to set a sound activated and the weapon fired. Okay, so create bullet. We're going to say sound activated equals true, and we're going to say weapon fired equals true. Okay, and so we have that sound effect activated there, and then when we check for collisions in our control loop, I believe, no, not here, where we check for collisions. Great bullet, maybe in the move loop. Yep, so here we go. If there's a collision, we're going to do sound activated equals true, and then we're going to say explosion equals true, just like that. Okay, that should do the trick. Okay, so to create a speaker or buzzer, we're going to connect our buzzer to one pin should connect to ground, and the other one should connect to pin 10. Alright, so we can hear a little sounds. So we might want a spaceship move sound too, but that one probably takes too long, right? So let's go ahead and change this. So we got our sound effect lengths, our counts, and so we got our weapon fired length, let's cut this down to maybe like a fraction of that. So let's say it's 4, and we'll set our explosion length to 2. And these are just multiples of that, whatever timing we got in that sound loop. And so I'm going to start this. We want to make the explosion longer. So let's make the explosion be 4, and the weapon fire be 3. It sounds pretty good, right? I mean, it's not perfect, but see what happens if an explosion takes place. It's not bad. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to come to maybe add like a movement sound when we're moving the spaceship as well. And so let's say we'll make a variable called ship moved. We'll set the ship moved length to maybe 1, so something really short. And then down in our sound loop, what we will do, move loop, render loop, control loop, music game, sound loop. Okay, and here, now we've got an else if explosion, or else to handle now our movement. Counter equals spaceship move length. Is that what we called it? That's what we're going to call it now. Yep. Or spaceship move length now. Okay. So back in our sound loop here, we'll set that frequency to maybe 200, and then we'll set this to be or spaceship move, and then we'll set that back to false. Okay, we'll make sure we use that same variable up here. So spaceship move, and then now in our move loop, we will add that sound effect as well. So reset game, set level, create bullet, control loop, move loop. All right, spaceship move timer. So move spaceship. Let's find that. Okay, so now we want to add here, so we'll say sound, actually we'll finish this in the other, we'll say sound activated equals true, and we'll say spaceship move equals true to trigger that sound. And then the one thing that I was thinking of could happen is if our game ends in the middle of a sound effect, then it's going to keep playing that sound, because we don't ever call no tone. And so in our game over state, what we need to do is we need to set this to be no tone on our speaker pin. And that way, if any sounds are active, it turns them off. Okay? So we actually have a couple problems here. And so we actually need to check to see if our current move is not equal to 0, right? So we don't always want to play a sound even when it's not moving. And so this function always calls, and so we only want to play that sound when we actually have the movement. Okay, so if that current move x is not equal to 0, and then the other thing is up here where we set the times for each of these. this one, it automatically is 0 because we subtract 1 right away, so we'll set that to be 2. And that should be good. We got our sounds. Let's try it out. Okay, and so now let's try those sound effects out. We can move. We've got our move sound, our fire sound, and our explosion. Okay, and that's pretty good. I think we'll call it here. We got the sounds in a little quicker than I thought we would, and we don't really make them too complex. I think there's an option here if you were interested in doing some more advanced sounds. Otherwise, we're in pretty good shape. Might want to move the score counter down a little bit. If you run into some other issues, you could tweak them. And from here, we could tweak the timing. And so we'll do maybe one more session here where we talk about ways to improve this and to tweak it. But from here, we're in a pretty good spot to wrap up our Space Invaders game.